Mama, Elara Void whispered, her small, slender Lyran fingers, tipped with nascent claws, pointing a luminescent educational toy not at the intricate star charts displayed on the wall of the diplomatic suit, but towards the vast obsidian canvas of the viewport. The stars are crying shiny tears, and that one. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial hush, her own faint, silver bio-luminescence pulsing softly around her collarbones. That one has too many eyes. Rhea Void, Lyran ambassador to the Silos Interstellar Compact, felt a cold dread unfurl within her, a sensation entirely distinct from the maternal concern her daughter's unsettling observation of the distant, anomalous celestial activity might normally provoke. It was the almost sub-audible hum resonating deep within her bones, the familiar thrum of Cathar, her unseen symbiote, that truly signaled the encroaching chaos, a silent alarm her Lyran stoicism could barely contain. The diplomatic station, designated Concordia Prime, orbited a binary star system, its polished corridors and opulent meeting rooms a fragile veneer of neutrality in a galaxy simmering with Cold War tensions. Here Dexter Bolt, human representative, officially a trade envoy, unofficially a troubleshooter with a past in asteroid mining that gave him a pragmatism most diplomats lacked, nursed a lukewarm cup of Asat's coffee, his gaze fixed on the same viewport Elara had indicated. He hadn't heard the child's words, but his own unease was a bitter taste in his mouth. His current assignment felt like another exercise in futility, mediating between squabbling factions while the real threat, the undeclared war, waged by privateers and deniable assets, choked the starlanes. His son, Leo, a whirlwind of 10-year-old human rebelliousness, was supposed to be in the station's supervised youth sector, but Dexter had a sinking feeling Leo had found a way to circumvent supervision. Rhea maintained her composure, a mask of serene indifference her species prized. "Curious Elara," she said, her voice a low, melodic contralto, the carefully modulated tones betraying nothing of the symbiote's agitation or her own rising apprehension. "The void holds many wonders and sometimes tricks of light," but Cathar's thrumming intensified, a silent counterpoint to her placid words, focusing her attention on the patch of crying stars. It wasn't light, it was consumption. A faint, almost imperceptible distortion rippling across the starfield, like heat haze over a desert, but on a cosmic scale. And the eyes Elara mentioned fleeting, predatory glints within that distortion. A world eater. Legends whispered of them, colossal spacefaring entities that devoured planets, leaving behind only void and ruin. Most considered them myths, bug 'em into frightened younglings. Cathar knew better. The immediate catalyst for Dexter and Rhea's forced interaction, however, was far more mundane, yet equally potent in its diplomatic disruptiveness. An urgent chime from Dexter's comlink shattered his brooding. "Bolt," he answered, his voice rough. "Envoy Bolt," came the clipped, exasperated tone of Station Security Chief Horgan, a gruff, four-armed Salosian. "Your progeny, Leo and Ambassador Void's offspring, Elara, have been apprehended, repurposing a restricted maintenance drone for what appears to be an unauthorized joyride through the station's primary ventilation shafts." Dexter squeezed the bridge of his nose. "Repurposing. Horgan, my son can barely reprogram the nutrient dispenser. Indeed, it appears the Lyran child provided the technical acumen. Your son provided the impetus for adventure, as he termed it." A heavy sigh escaped Dexter. This was precisely the kind of diplomatic incident he was supposed to prevent, not instigate through his own family. He glanced towards the Lyran delegation's designated wing, a deep sense of foreboding settling in. Dealing with the Lyrans was like navigating a minefield of unspoken protocols and emotional suppression. Ambassador Rhea Void, in particular, was an enigma, her beauty defined by Lyran standards through the complex, shifting patterns of her internal bioluminescence that shimmered beneath her silvery skin like captured starlight was undeniable, but her demeanor was colder than the vacuum outside. Her aura, usually a cascade of rare, vibrant blues and greens that spoke of immense inner control and power, currently seemed muted, almost clouded. Rhea received a similar, though far more understated, notification on her personal datapad. She read it, her elegant features remaining impassive, though the faint silver light at her temples pulsed once, sharply. Elara, her meticulously disciplined daughter, involved in such unseemly behavior. It was almost unthinkable, yet the evidence was irrefutable. The need to retrieve their children forced them into the same sterile, official space, the station security office. Dexter arrived first, running a hand through his already unteddy brown hair. Leo was perched on a bench, looking unrepentant, a smudge of grease on his cheek. Across from him, Elara sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her silvery skin emitting a soft, apologetic lavender glow. Rhea entered moments later, a vision of regal composure. Her bio-luminescent patterns, usually a complex tapestry of sapphire and emerald, were now a tightly controlled, almost monochromatic silver, indicating extreme restraint. Ambassador Void. Dexter began aiming for a tone of wary solidarity. It seems our delegations have caused a minor stir. Rhea inclined her head, her gaze cool. Envoy Bolt. Indeed. Elara's actions were unexpected. She will be disciplined accordingly. Her voice was devoid of inflection, yet Dexter sensed a current of something beneath the surface, perhaps a Lyran equivalent of embarrassment, or more likely, annoyance at this public display of imperfection. Lyrans, he knew, viewed overt emotional displays as a profound weakness. Stoicism was paramount. Leo's got a talent for leading others into unexpected situations. Dexter admitted, giving his son a pointed look. Leo just grinned unfazed. Elara, however, looked up at her mother, her own faint lavender glow dimming slightly. Mother, Leo showed me how the drone's guidance system could be optimized for navigating smaller conduits. It was an intellectual exercise. Rhea's gaze remained on her daughter, unwavering. An exercise conducted in a restricted zone, utilizing station property without authorization. The logic of the exercise does not negate the transgression, Elara. Dexter, despite his cynicism, felt a pang of sympathy for the small Lyran girl. He'd seen that look before, the one where a child's genuine curiosity crashes into an adult's unyielding rules. His own adaptability, honed from years of jury, rigging mining equipment in hostile environments, and navigating treacherous political landscapes, made him more inclined to bend those rules, or at least find creative interpretations. As they were signing the requisite apologies and agreeing to cover the minimal damages, a series of jarring explosions rocked Concordia Prime. Red alert klaxons blared, casting the Stark security office in pulsing, ominous crimson light. What in the void was that? Dexter exclaimed, instinctively moving to shield Leo. Horgan was already at his console, his four hands flying across the controls. External breaches? Multiple hull failures, Sector Gamma 7. Unidentified assailants, privateers, by their energy signatures, standard Corsair, class marauders. They're targeting cargo conduits and Krillet, they're firing on the diplomatic docking bays. Rhea's stoic mask finally cracked, a flicker of something akin to alarm in her luminous eyes. Her bio-luminescent patterns flared for a microsecond into a startling, vibrant crimson before returning to a controlled, icy blue. K-Thar surged within her, a silent scream of warning. This was no random raid. The privateers were too precise, too aggressive. The children, she stated, her voice tight but still controlled. We must secure the children. Dexter nodded, his diplomatic cynicism momentarily forgotten, replaced by the sharp focus of a man used to crisis. Agreed, my quarters are closer, more defensible, designed for human atmospheric ranges. Yours. Mine are. More secure in other ways. Rhea replied cryptically, a subtle shimmer of energy, almost invisible, playing around her hands. But distance is a factor. Yours will suffice for now. The station lurched violently. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, sealing off sections. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim, unreliable glow of emergency chem lights. The screams and shouts of panicked station personnel echoed through the corridors. This way, Dexter yelled, grabbing Leo's hand and pulling Elara close, as Rhea moved with a preternatural grace beside them, her eyes, now glowing faintly in the dark, scanning their surroundings. He could feel the heat of her proximity, an unusual energy signature that his engineer's senses registered as potent. The initial setup of forced cooperation was now violently accelerated by the privateer attack. Their children, the cause of their initial, awkward meeting, were now the primary reason for their desperate alliance. As they navigated the darkened, debris-strewn corridors, dodging panicked citizens and station security, trying to mount a defense, Rhea's movements were astonishingly fluid, almost predictive. At one point, a falling support beam threatened to crush Elara. Before Dexter could react, Rhea was there, one hand outstretched. The beam didn't just stop, it seemed to momentarily hang, as if caught in an unseen net of energy, before deflecting sideways with a groan of stressed metal. Rhea herself barely seemed to exert any effort, though the blue light under her skin pulsed with increased intensity. Dexter caught a glimpse of intricate, almost crystalline patterns flaring across her forearms, as she did so, patterns he'd never seen on any Lyran before. She quickly masked it, her hand dropping, her expression unreadable. Impressive reflexes, Ambassador. Dexter managed, his heart still hammering. Lyran physiology allows for rapid responses, she replied, her voice tight. The lie was evident even to Dexter. This was more than just reflexes. This was something else. The journey to Dexter's quarters was a harrowing gauntlet. Privateer boarding parties were already making their way through the breached sections. They encountered one such group, rough-looking mercenaries, a motley collection of species, armed with pulse rifles and vibro blades. Dexter, using his knowledge of the station's layout from countless tedious diplomatic tours, tried to find a detour, but they were cornered in a service junction. "Stay behind me," he ordered, pushing the children back, wishing he had more than a standard-issue stun pistol that felt woefully inadequate. Before the privateers could open fire, Rhea stepped forward. The air around her crackled almost imperceptibly. "You will not pass?" she stated, her voice imbued with an unnatural resonance. The privateers hesitated, momentarily disoriented by her calm, authoritative presence. Then the lead mercenary, a hulking reptilian, sneered. "Pretty words, lady. We're just here for the cargo. Don't make it personal." As he raised his rifle, Rhea's hands moved in a complex, blurring gesture. The ambient light from a sparking conduit nearby seemed to bend, to flow towards her, absorbed into her skin, which now blazed with an almost blinding white light, intricate patterns of silver and gold swirling across her entire body. Then, with a sharp exhalation, she redirected it, not as a blast, but as a disorienting wave of pure sensory overload, a flash of light, a discombobulating shimmer of warped space, and a high-frequency sonic pulse that made Dexter's teeth ache. The privateers stumbled back, clutching their heads, their weapons clattering to the deck. "Now, envoy bolt," Rhea urged, the intense light fading, leaving her slightly breathless, her usual cool bio-luminescence now flickering erratically, a sign of exertion. Dexter didn't need telling twice. He scooped up Elara, who was staring at her mother with wide, awestruck eyes, while Leo, for once, was speechless. They scrambled through a maintenance hatch Dexter had spotted, leaving the disoriented privateers behind. What was that?" Dexter panted, once they were relatively safe in a cramped Jeffries tube. Rhea leaned against the bulkhead, her breathing evening out. Her bioluminescent patterns were slowly stabilizing, returning to a softer, more controlled blue. "A Lyran defensive technique. We can manipulate certain energy frequencies. It is taxing." Dexter knew she was understating it. He'd felt the raw power in that display. This wasn't just some parlor trick. This was significant, and the way the light seemed to flow into her, it reminded him of specialized energy capacitors he'd worked with in mining, designed to absorb and store immense power. The official reports on Lyran abilities mentioned minor energy redirection. Camouflage, this was leagues beyond that. Her hidden depth, the symbiotic relationship with Cathar, was clearly the source of this enhanced power, though she was far from admitting it. The immediate consequences of this encounter were clear. Rhea had revealed a capability far beyond what was publicly known about Lyrans. If any of those privateers recovered quickly enough and reported what they saw, she and by extension, her people would become a target of intense interest, and not the friendly kind. Furthermore, the privateers' attack on Concordia Prime felt increasingly non-random. Targeting diplomatic bays, it smelled of a deliberate attempt to destabilize the already fragile peace, or perhaps, to capture or silence someone specific. The thought sent a shiver down Dexter's spine. Were they after him? Or Rhea? They finally reached Dexter's quarters, a relatively modest suite. The emergency power was intermittent, but the reinforced door held. Leo, recovering his bravado, immediately started exploring, while Elara sat quietly, observing her mother with a new intense curiosity. "Thank you, Ambassador," Dexter said, sincerity in his voice. "You saved us back there." Rhea gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Cooperation was logical. "Our children's safety is paramount." The stoic facade was firmly back in place, but Dexter now knew it was just that, a facade, carefully constructed over something far more complex and powerful. Suddenly the station's comm system crackled to life, Horgan's voice, strained and urgent. "Attention all diplomatic personnel. This is not a random privateer raid. We have identified the assailants as operatives of the Silas Collective. They are systematically targeting specific delegations. Repeat, the Silas Collective is active. Evacuation protocols are compromised. They're blocking all primary escape routes." Dexter felt his blood run cold. The The Silas Collective, a shadowy organization rumored to deal in black market weaponry, illicit precursor technology, and political destabilization. They were ruthless, efficient, and usually operated with complete deniability. If they were involved, this was far more dangerous than he'd imagined. Rhea's reaction was subtle but profound. Her bio-luminescence dimmed for a moment, as if a light had been snuffed out deep within her, before flaring briefly with a cold, hard brilliance. Cathar was screaming a warning now, a high-pitched mental keen that only she could perceive. The Silas Collective. They knew of Cathar, or at least, beings like Cathar. They hunted them. The Collective. She murmured, almost to herself. Then this attack is not for mere plunder. Her eyes met Dexter's, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something that might have been fear, quickly suppressed. Envoy Bolt, I believe our initial assessment of this situation was insufficient. We are not merely caught in a crossfire. We, or perhaps one of us specifically, may be the target. The World Eater. Elara had seen the unsettling celestial phenomenon, suddenly felt chillingly relevant. Was there a connection between the Silas Collective's brutal raid and that distant, consuming horror? Dexter had always dismissed the World Eater stories as spacer myths. Now, faced with the ruthless efficiency of the Collective and Rhea's extraordinary abilities, the universe felt a lot larger and infinitely more dangerous. The immediate problem, however, was escape. Concordia Prime was rapidly becoming a death trap, and the Silas Collective was hunting. Their unexpected union, born of misbehaving children, had escalated into a desperate fight for survival. The station's main transit systems were down, and the official evacuation routes were death traps. Dexter's mind, trained in finding unconventional pathways through solid rock, began to race. There might be another way out, he said slowly, looking at the station schematics he had stored on his personal datapad. An old, decommissioned cargo transit network. It runs through the underbelly of the station. Dangerous, unlit, probably full of hazards, but they won't be expecting anyone to use it. Rhea considered this. Describe this network. Dexter pulled up a crude map. It connects to a rarely used auxiliary hangar bay on the far side of the station, primarily used for waste disposal and bulk mineral shipments. If we can get there, we might find a small freighter, something overlooked. The risks? Rhea asked, her tone clinical. High, Dexter admitted. Unstable conduits, zero life support in sections, residual radiation from old cargo spills, and who knows what kind of vermin have taken up residence. But it beats facing the Silas Collective head-on in a firefight we can't win. Rhea's gaze flickered to Elara, then to Leo, who was now trying to pry open a panel on Dexter's replicator, his earlier bravado giving way to a nervous energy. The children's safety is the priority. If this route offers a higher probability of survival, we will take it. Her Lyran stoicism was a shield, but Dexter could see the strain around her eyes, the faint tremor in her bio-luminescent patterns that betrayed her internal turmoil. The cultural imperative to hide emotion was warring with maternal instinct and the primal fear of the Collective. This was their turning point. They had to navigate a dangerous, forgotten part of the station, an artificial wilderness, within the metallic jungle of Concordia Prime, relying entirely on each other's specific knowledge and skills. Dexter, the adaptable engineer, knew structures, systems, and how to improvise. Rhea, the enigmatic Lyran, possessed abilities that defied conventional understanding, senses sharpened by Cathar, and a surprising resilience. All right, Dexter said, taking a deep breath. Let's gear up. We travel light, fast, and quiet. He rummaged through his emergency supplies, pulling out rebreathers, glow sticks, a multi-tool, and a compact medical kit. Rhea watched him, then nodded. Elara, stay close to me. Do exactly as I say. Elara, her earlier awe now tempered with a dawning understanding of their peril, nodded silently, her small hand gripping her mother's. Their journey into the station's forgotten underbelly began through a maintenance access panel. Dexter managed to pry open in a utility corridor. The air that billowed out was stale, metallic, and cold. Darkness swallowed them as they descended a rickety ladder into a vast, echoing space. The only light came from Dexter's handheld illuminator and the faint, ethereal glow emanating from Rhea and Elara. This is extensive, Rhea observed, her voice hushed, her senses already adapting to the gloom. Cathar was alert, mapping the unseen pathways, tasting the stagnant air for threats. Concordia Prime was built on the bones of an older, much larger trade post. Dexter explained, his voice low. They sealed off a lot of the original infrastructure. This is part of it. The wilderness of the station's guts was a treacherous labyrinth of decaying conduits, sparking wires, and narrow crawl spaces. At times, they had to wade through pools of viscous, unidentified fluid. Strange, scuttling sounds echoed in the distance. Leo, initially thrilled by the adventure, soon grew quiet, clutching Dexter's hand tightly. Elara, true to her Lyran discipline, moved with a quiet efficiency that belayed her age, her silver bio-luminescence a small beacon of calm in the oppressive darkness. Rhea proved invaluable. Her natural camouflage abilities, a subtle shifting of her skin patterns and light emission to blend with the shadows, allowed her to scout ahead silently. More than once, she detected hazards Dexter would have missed: a structurally unsound floor plate, a pocket of toxic gas, the nests of territorial, six-legged station vermin. Her energy absorption also came into play. At one point, they encountered a junction blocked by live, arcing power cables. Dexter was about to suggest a lengthy detour when Rhea stepped forward. "Stand back," she instructed. Concentrating, she extended her hands. The wild electrical energy seemed to flow towards her, not with the dramatic intake of before, but with a controlled siphon, her bio-luminescent patterns flaring with intricate, golden webs as she absorbed the charge. The arcing stopped. The cables went dead. She held the energy for a moment, her body thrumming with contained power, then slowly dissipated it as harmless heat and light, her patterns returning to their cool blue. Dexter stared, dumbfounded. How much energy can you actually hold? Rhea's breathing was a little faster, but she maintained her composure. There are limits. And specific types of energy are more compatible. That was relatively low-grade electrical discharge. Cathar, however, pulsed a warning of strain. It could handle such bursts, but repeated, large-scale absorption without a chance to process or discharge was dangerous for them both. Compatible or not, that was incredible. Dexter said, shaking his head in continued amazement. His initial perception of her as a cold, aloof diplomat was shattering, replaced by a growing respect and something more, an undeniable fascination. Their forced proximity in these dangerous, claustrophobic conditions began to wear down the barriers between them. They had to rely on each other implicitly. Dexter's adaptability shone when they reached a chasm where a walkway had collapsed. Using his multi-tool and scavenge cable, he rigged a makeshift zipline. Rhea, despite her initial Lyran distrust of such jury-rigged contraptions, trusted his engineering expertise. Her only concern the safety of Elara. She went first, Elara strapped securely to her, moving with a grace that made the perilous crossing look almost easy. Dexter followed with Leo, his heart in his throat, until they were all safely across. Sharing dwindling rations of water and protein bars, they huddled together for warmth in a particularly cold section of a ventilation shaft. The children, exhausted, finally slept, curled up between them. In the dim glow of a single chem stick, Dexter found himself watching Rhea. Her usual regal composure had softened in the dim light, the lines of stress around her eyes more visible. Her bioluminescence was a soft, gentle silver, pulsing rhythmically with her breathing, like a captured nebula. "You're worried," he said softly, breaking the silence. Rhea didn't look at him, her gaze fixed on the sleeping Elara. "My daughter has never known such chaos. Lyran's value order predictability. This is antithetical to our way of life. No one's way of life prepares them for the Silas Collective." Dexter replied grimly. "What do you know about them? Why would they target you, or your delegation?" Rhea hesitated. The Lyran cultural taboo against revealing personal vulnerabilities, or indeed anything that could be perceived as a weakness, was strong. But Cathar urged her. This human, Dexter Bolt, was proving to be resourceful, brave, and surprisingly trustworthy. And he was now inextricably linked to their fate. "My people. Some of us possess a unique symbiosis," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "An entity, Cathar, that lives within. It enhances certain abilities, grants others. Energy manipulation, heightened senses, longevity." She paused, gauging his reaction. Dexter listened intently, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "The Silas Collective," Rhea continued, "has long sought to weaponize such symbiotic relationships. They hunt those like me, dissect them, try to replicate the bond artificially. Usually they fail, leaving only death. My presence at Concordia Prime, as an ambassador, was supposed to be a sign of Lyran openness, but perhaps it was merely an invitation to them." Dexter processed this. The energy absorption, the camouflage, the preternatural awareness, it all made sense now. This Cathar, it's sentient, yes. A partner, ancient, wise. A faint shimmer of gold, a color of deep affection and respect in Lyran chromatics, touched her skin. It is a part of me. Without Cathar I would be less. This admission was profound for a Lyran, a crack in the armor of stoicism. And it's why you're so strong, Dexter murmured, understanding dawning. The world eater Elara saw. Cathar reacted to that too, didn't it? Rhea nodded slowly. Cathar senses a resonance. A deep, ancient hunger. The collective's activities have sometimes coincided with the appearance of these devourers. It is a connection we do not understand, but one that Cathar feels as a profound wrongness. So, the collective isn't just after you for Cathar. Dexter mused. They might be involved with the world eaters somehow. Or at least, their actions are stirring them up. He recalled Elara's words. Too many eyes. It painted a chilling picture, and if you uncovered something about their operations, or this connection, they'd want to silence you. Rhea's bio-luminescence flickered. It is possible. My access as an ambassador combined with Cathar's senses. I may have inadvertently perceived data patterns, overheard whispers, things I did not fully comprehend at the time, but which Cathar registered as significant threats. This was the missing piece. Rhea was the witness. Her unique symbiotic nature had allowed her to perceive something the Silas Collective desperately wanted to keep hidden, perhaps their manipulation or exploitation of the world eaters, or some other dark secret tied to them. The attack on Concordia Prime wasn't just to capture her, it was to silence her permanently. A new kind of tension began to build between them, woven from shared danger, grudging respect, and the undeniable intimacy of their forced proximity. Dexter found himself increasingly drawn to Rhea's quiet strength, the fierce protectiveness she showed Elara, and the glimpses of the passionate, powerful being beneath the icy Lyran exterior. Her bioluminescence, which Lyran's considered the pinnacle of beauty, was indeed mesmerizing, especially now that he understood it was a reflection of her inner state, her energy, her very life force intertwined with Cathar. He found himself noticing the subtle shifts in color and pattern, learning to read them like a private language. Rhea, in turn, found Dexter's adaptability and uncomplaining resilience compelling. He was so different from the rigid, protocol-obsessed diplomats she usually dealt with. His cynicism was a shield, much like her stoicism, but beneath it lay a core of decency and a fierce determination to protect his son. He didn't recoil from her revelation about Cathar. Instead, he accepted it with a pragmatism that was almost comforting. He saw her power not as something alien or frightening, but as a tool, a resource. And he looked at her true self revealed in the shifting light of her skin, with an appreciation that transcended mere Lyran aesthetics. It was an appreciation for her. Their journey continued for what felt like days. They faced more hazards, a section of tunnel flooded with scalding steam, which Rhea, drawing on Cathar's resilience, scouted through, her skin shimmering as she subtly manipulated the thermal currents around her to find a narrow, cooler path. Another time, they were stalked by a pack of mutated, bioluminescent rodents with needle-sharp teeth. Dexter, using his engineering knowledge, created a diversion with sparking wires and a loud sonic emitter from his multi-tool, while Rhea used her camouflage to shepherd the children silently past their hunting ground. During a brief rest in a relatively secure alcove, Elara, now more comfortable with Dexter, asked him about Earth. Is it very different from Lyra Prime? Dexter smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened the cynical lines around his eyes. Very. We have vast oceans of water, not crystalline seas. Green forests, not fields of light-sculpted flora. And our emotions, we tend to show them a bit more freely. He glanced at Rhea, a teasing light in his eyes. Rhea's lips quirked, the closest she'd come to a smile. An observation I have noted, envoy Bolt. With some frequency. Call me Dexter, he said quietly. She met his gaze, a flicker of gold in her blue aura. And you may call me Rhea. The simple exchange of names felt significant, a step across a cultural chasm. The stakes escalated dramatically when they finally neared the auxiliary hangar bay. Cathar sent a sharp pulse of alarm through Rhea. The Silas Collective, she whispered, her body tensing, her bioluminescence dimming to a shadowy camouflage. They are here. Guarding the hangar. Dexter peered through a crack in a ventilation grate. He could see several heavily armed collective operatives patrolling the hangar entrance. There was no way they could fight their way through. There must be another access point, he muttered, scanning his mental schematics. A maintenance shaft. Yes, There's one that should lead into the hangar's upper gantry. It was a perilous climb, up a narrow, rust-eaten ladder in a pitch-black vertical shaft. Leo, despite his fear, showed surprising courage, mimicking Dexter's careful movements. Elara, guided by Rhea's quiet instructions and Thar's subtle sensory enhancements, climbed with an eerie sureness. From the gantry, they looked down into the hangar. There were indeed a few small, battered freighters. But there was also something else. Something that made Dexter's stomach clench and Rhea's bioluminescence flare with a cold, dangerous light. Parked in the center of the hangar was a sleek, black ship bearing no insignia, but radiating an undeniable menace. And beside it, Silas Collective operatives were loading an unconscious Lyran onto a medical gurney. Not just any Lyran, Rhea gasped, a choked sound, her control shattering for a moment. Ambassador Kalen, she breathed, her voice raw with anguish. He was a senior Lyran diplomat, a mentor and another known Thar host. They have him. This changed everything. It wasn't just about their escape anymore. The Silas Collective was actively hunting and capturing her people. The information Kalen possessed, combined with Rhea's own unanalyzed knowledge, could be devastating if it fell into the Collective's hands. Suddenly, a new, more terrifying element emerged. A deep, resonant thrum vibrated through the station structure, a sound that bypassed the ears and settled deep in their bones. The lights in the hangar flickered violently. On a large external viewport screen, still intermittently active, the image of the starfield outside shifted, distorted. The crying stars, the thing with too many eyes that Elara had seen, was closer, much closer. It was a colossal, amorphous shadow against the void, blotting out constellations, tendrils of dark energy or matter extending from its vast, undefined form. The World Eater. It's here, Dexter whispered, a primal fear gripping him. Thar screamed within Rhea, a sound of pure existential dread and recognition. The Collective, they are not just hunting us. They are luring it. Or perhaps, it is drawn to their activities. The connection was terrifyingly clear. The Silas Collective's operations, their experiments with precursor tech or symbiotic energies, were acting as a beacon or a catalyst for the World Eater. And Concordia Prime, with its concentration of life and energy, was now directly in its path. The Collective operatives in the hangar seemed unperturbed, almost expectant. They were clearly aware of the World Eater's approach. Were they planning to escape and leave the station to be consumed, silencing all witnesses and destroying all evidence in one fell swoop? We have to get Kalen, Rhea said, her voice hardening with a new resolve, her earlier fear replaced by a cold fury. Her bioluminescence pulsed with an intense, determined sapphire light. And we have to find a ship. Now, Dexter looked at her, at the fire in her eyes, the sheer power radiating from her. His admiration deepened into something stronger, fiercer. All right, he said. Here's what we do. Their plan was desperate. Dexter would create a diversion, using his engineering skills to overload a nearby power substation, hopefully drawing some of the guards away. Rhea, using her camouflage and energy abilities, would attempt to reach Kalen and free him. The children would have to hide and pray. The moments before they acted were taught with unspoken emotions. Dexter found himself reaching out, his hand hovering near Rhea's arm. Be careful, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Rhea met his gaze, and for a heart-stopping moment, he saw not the stoic ambassador, but the woman beneath, vulnerable yet resolute. A soft, warm amber, a Lyran color of deep affection and trust flickered within her usual sapphire aura. You too, Dexter. Then, she melted into the shadows, becoming a ghost. Dexter took a deep breath, activated his comm link to a jury-rigged detonator he'd planted, and sent the signal. The explosion rocked the hangar, plunging a section into darkness and chaos. Shouts and alarms erupted. As predicted, several guards rushed towards the source of the blast. This was Rhea's chance. She moved with an almost supernatural speed and silence, a phantom weaving through the confusion. She reached Kalen, who was stirring feebly. The guards restraining him were momentarily distracted. Rhea unleashed a focused pulse of concussive energy, not the wide burst from before, but a precise strike that sent the two nearest guards sprawling, disoriented but not permanently harmed. She severed Kalen's restraints with a quick burst of focused thermal energy from her fingertips, another ability Thar enhanced. Rhea. Kalen croaked, his own bioluminescence faint and erratic. What? No time. We have to move, she urged, helping him to his feet. He was weak, clearly drugged. Meanwhile, Dexter, having created his diversion, was racing towards the most promising-looking freighter, a battered but sturdy Corellian light transport, the Stardust Drifter. He bypassed the cockpit lock with practiced ease, his fingers flying over the ignition sequence. The engines coughed, sputtered, then roared to life with a reassuring hum. "Leo, Elara, get aboard?" "Now," he yelled, gesturing them up the ramp. Rhea was half carrying, half dragging Kalen towards the ship, other collective guards now turning their attention towards them, weapons raised. Blaster fire stitched the deck plating around them. Rhea spun, absorbing a stray shot into her palm, the energy flaring bright white before she redirected it into a nearby stack of cargo containers, causing them to explode and create another momentary shield. The effort cost her light flickered, and Dexter saw her stumble. He laid down covering fire with the freighter's small, forward-mounted blaster cannons, forcing the guards to duck. "Rhea, hurry!" She pushed Kalen up the ramp, then practically threw herself aboard as Dexter sealed the hatch and slammed the throttle forward. The Stardust Drifter surged out of the hangar bay, scraping against the docking clamps, and into the terrifying majesty of open space. Just as massive, shadowy tendrils from the World Eater began to brush against Concordia Prime's outer hull. The station was screaming, alarms blaring across all channels, its structure groaning under unnatural stresses. Looking back at the viewport, they saw Concordia Prime begin to buckle, sections of it being pulled apart, drawn into the swirling, multi-eyed maw of the colossal entity. "Gods," Dexter breathed, horrified. They had escaped, but the station and everyone left on it was doomed. Rhea collapsed into a co-pilot's chair, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her bio-luminescence a chaotic storm of flickering colors. Cathar was severely depleted, the effort of saving Kalen and shielding them from blaster fire, pushing their symbiotic bond to its limits. Elara rushed to her mother's side, her small hands touching Rhea's arm, her own silver light a comforting glow. Leo, pale but resolute, checked the ship's status readouts for Dexter. "Where do we go?" Leo asked, his voice small. Dexter looked at Rhea. Her eyes were closed, but she sensed his gaze. "There is a place," she managed, her voice weak. "A hidden Lyran colony on a moon orbiting Xylos Beta. It has medical facilities. Kalen needs help. And Cathar, we need to recover." "Xylos Beta," Dexter mused. "That's deep in contested territory. And the Collective will be hunting us with everything they've got. They know you have Kalen, and they know you saw whatever you saw. They will not expect us to go there," Rhea said. "It is our only chance." The journey to Xylos Beta was fraught with peril. The Stardust Drifter, while sturdy, was no match for a dedicated Silas Collective pursuit vessel. They had to rely on Dexter's piloting skills, his knowledge of old smuggler routes and asteroid fields, to evade detection. Rhea, though weakened, used Cathar's enhanced senses to give them early warnings of approaching patrols or sensor sweeps. During one close call, when a collective destroyer nearly cornered them in an asteroid cluster, Rhea, despite her depleted state, managed to project a ghost energy signature, a faint echo of their ship, leading the destroyer on a wild goose chase, while Dexter navigated them through a dangerously tight gravitational slingshot maneuver. The effort left her almost unconscious, her bioluminescence fading to a terrifyingly dim flicker. Dexter, with Elara's anxious help, managed to get her into a medical bunk. He administered what stimulants and nutrient solutions he had, but he knew it wasn't enough. Cathar was fading. "She needs a specific energy frequency," Elara whispered, her eyes filled with tears. Like the heart of a young star, but gentler." Dexter's mind raced. A young star, he remembered Lyran biology texts mentioning their sensitivity to certain stellar radiation for maintaining their bioluminescence and overall health. But generating that specific frequency. Then he remembered Rhea absorbing the electrical energy, the way it flowed into her. Perhaps, he looked at the ship's engines, then at Rhea. It was a crazy idea, a long shot. "Elara," he said, does Cathar respond to the ship's energy core?" Elara tilted her head. "The core is too chaotic, too loud. But parts of its resonance, sometimes Cathar listens." Dexter got to work. He couldn't tap the main drive core directly. It was too powerful, too unstable. But the ship had secondary power conduits, environmental systems that ran on a more refined, stable energy flow. He began to reroute and recalibrate, using his multi-tool to fine-tune the energy regulators, trying to filter and modulate the output, guided by Elara's descriptions of the gentle star heart frequency. It was like tuning a delicate instrument, feeling for the right resonance. Hours later, sweat dripping from his brow, he managed to create a stable, pulsating flow of energy through a modified medical conduit, directing it towards Rhea. He laid the conduit gently against her arm. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, her bio-luminescence began to respond. A faint spark of gold ignited deep within the fading blue, then another. The chaotic flickering began to stabilize, to coalesce into coherent patterns. Cathar was drawing on the energy, absorbing it, healing. Dexter watched, breathless. Rhea's eyes fluttered open. She looked at him, confusion giving way to a dawning understanding. Her hand, weak but steady, reached out and covered his on the conduit. Her skin was warm, thrumming with returning life. "Dexter," she whispered, her voice hoarse. The sapphire light in her aura deepened, and for the first time, he saw a clear, unadulterated flush of rose gold, the Lyran equivalent of a deep, heartfelt blush, an expression of profound gratitude, and something far more tender spread across her cheekbones and temples. "You saved us." In that moment, surrounded by the hum of the struggling freighter, with the threat of the collective, and the shadow of the world eater looming, something shifted irrevocably between them. The shared danger, the desperate fight for survival, had forged a bond stronger than either of them could have anticipated. He had seen her at her most powerful and her most vulnerable. She had witnessed his courage, his ingenuity, and his unwavering loyalty to his son, and now, to her and Elara. "We save each other, Rhea," he said softly, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. The touch was electric, a spark that had nothing to do with the energy conduit. The Galactic plague, a creeping sickness known as the Void Blight, had been a distant, terrifying news item for months, decimating outlying colonies, resistant to all known treatments. Ambassador Kalin, now slowly recovering under Elara's surprisingly adept care. Lyran children learned basic bioenergetic healing early, revealed its true horror. The Blight, it doesn't just kill. Kalin rasped, his own bioluminescence still weak but stable. It unravels. It severs the connection between mind and body, then between a being and the universe itself. For Lyrans with Cathar, it's a double death. He shuddered. The Silas Collective, they weren't just trying to capture us. They were studying the Blight, trying to understand why some Cathar hosts showed a resistance. Dexter felt a chill. Resistance. You mean a cure? Not a cure? Rhea corrected, now stronger, sitting beside Kalin. Cathar was still recovering, but her core strength was returning. More like a key. Cathar, and symbioses like it, interact with the universe on a quantum bioenergetic level. The Blight disrupts these interactions. But some Cathar pairings, they possess a specific resonant frequency, a harmonic that can realign the disruption. Temporarily. It's not a cure, but it's the only thing that offers any respite, any hope of finding one. "And your Cathar, Rhea?" Dexter asked, his gaze intense. "Does it have this harmonic?" Rhea looked down at her hands, where intricate patterns of silver and gold now flowed with renewed strength. Cathar believes so. It is a rare resonance, tied to its ancient lineage. The collective knows this. It's why they are so desperate to capture hosts like Kalin and myself. They don't want a cure for the galaxy. They want to control it, to weaponize it. The stakes were now impossibly high. They weren't just running for their lives. Rhea and Cathar held a potential key to staunching a galactic plague, and the Silas Collective wanted that key for their own nefarious purposes. The World Eater, too, felt connected. Kalin confirmed Cathar's earlier suspicions. The Collective's experiments, their attempts to harness precursor energies, they create ripples, disturbances in the fabric of reality. These disturbances, they attract the Devourers. The World Eaters are a consequence, a cosmic balancing act, perhaps, to what the Collective unleashes. The hidden Lyran colony on Xylos Beta's moon, Sanctuary, was a breathtaking sight, a network of crystalline structures nestled within a massive, bioluminescent cavern, powered by geothermal vents and the moon's unique magnetosphere. It was a haven of peace and healing. But even here they were not safe. The Collective had spies everywhere. As Rhea and Kalin recovered, their bond deepened. Dexter found himself spending hours with Rhea, ostensibly discussing strategy, but often just talking. He learned about Lyran culture, their art, their philosophy of emotional control, which he now understood was not about suppression, but about mastery and focus. She, in turn, was fascinated by his tales of Earth, his engineering background, his unwavering belief in finding solutions, even in the face of overwhelming odds. One evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing cavern, the children asleep inside. The air was cool, filled with the scent of strange, nocturnal moonflowers. Rhea's bioluminescence was a soft, intricate dance of sapphire, silver, and the occasional, warm flicker of amber when she looked at him. Thar is stronger now, she said, her voice a low melody. Thanks to you, Dexter. I just tinkered a bit. He deflected, though the intensity of her gaze made his heart race. You did more than tinker, she corrected softly. You understood. You saw us. She turned to him, her luminous eyes searching his. Lyran's expressed connection differently. Our beauty, our status, is in our light, the complexity of our aura. It reflects our inner truth. Her hand lifted and her fingers, glowing faintly, traced the line of his jaw. The touch was feather light, yet it sent a shiver through him. Your aura, Dexter Bolt, if I could see it as Lyran's do, I imagine it would be one of fierce loyalty, unyielding courage, and a surprising incandescent warmth. He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. Rhea. Her fingers moved to his lips, silencing him. For Lyran's, physical intimacy is an extension of this energetic merging, a sharing of light of essence. Her own light intensified, the sapphire deepening, the silver threads within it beginning to pulse with a golden energy he now recognized as profound affection, and something more, desire. When Cathar was weak, when your energy flowed into us, it was more than just healing. It was a joining. He could feel the heat radiating from her, the thrum of Cathar's power, now benign, inviting. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb stroking the soft, luminous skin. I feel it too, Rhea, he whispered. Something powerful, something I don't want to lose. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing for a moment. When she opened them, they were blazing with a fierce, tender light. Then don't, she murmured, and then she kissed him. It was unlike any kiss he had ever known. It was not just the meeting of lips, but a confluence of energies. He felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of her essence, of Cathar's ancient power, merging with his own. Her bioluminescence enveloped them, a cocoon of swirling blues, golds, and silvers, the patterns shifting, intensifying, reflecting the depth of their burgeoning emotions. It was a kiss that spoke of shared battles, of lives saved, of an unexpected union forged in the heart of chaos. It was the moment their fight for survival became inextricably linked with their fight for love. Their respite in Sanctuary was short-lived. A coded message reached Callan. The Silas Collective was closing in. Worse, they had activated a massive, precursor artifact, a star lifter, megastructure in the nearby Helios Prime system. They were siphoning unimaginable amounts of energy directly from its sun, causing it to rapidly destabilize. A star lifter, Dexter exclaimed. Those things are theoretical. The energy output would be catastrophic. They intend to use that energy, Callan said grimly, his face pale, to power a weapon capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Or perhaps to create a controlled beacon to draw the World Eater to a specific target. A target like Elara Prime, or Earth. Rhea's eyes hardened. And the process of siphoning the star, Cathar feels it. It's creating a massive resonant distortion. The same kind of distortion that attracts the Devourers. They are turning Helios Prime into a massive lure and a weapon. They knew what they had to do. They couldn't run anymore. They had to stop the Silas Collective, not just for themselves, but for the galaxy. The Star Lifter was their target, and Rhea, with Cathar's unique harmonic resonance, was their only hope of disrupting the Collective's control over the precursor technology and perhaps even pushing back against the encroaching World Eater. The cure for the Void Blight might be within her, but if they didn't stop the Collective now, there would be no galaxy left to save. Their plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. They would use the Stardust Drifter, modified with some Lyran stealth technology from Sanctuary, to infiltrate the Helios Prime system, already swarming with Collective ships. Dexter would pilot them close to the Star Lifter. Rhea, channeling Cathar, would attempt to interface with the megastructure's control system, using her unique energy signature to disrupt the siphoning process and hopefully overload the Collective's weapon. Leo and Elara, along with Callan, would remain hidden on Sanctuary, a painful but necessary precaution. The journey to Helios Prime was a tense, silent passage through enemy lines. Dexter's piloting was masterful, weaving through patrols, using asteroid debris as cover. Rhea sat beside him, her eyes closed in concentration, Thar already reaching out, sensing the turbulent energies of the dying star and the oppressive technological signature of the star lifter. The megastructure was a terrifying marvel, a colossal latticework of unknown alloys wrapped around Helios Prime. Its tendrils plunged deep into the star's chromosphere, visibly draining its life. The star itself was a writhing ball of plasma, lashing out with violent solar flares, its light dimming, pulsing erratically. And beyond it, a horrifyingly familiar shadow was coalescing, the World Eater, drawn by the immense energy discharge and the stellar death throes. "We're running out of time," Dexter said grimly, navigating the drifter through a storm of solar ejecta. "The star is going critical, and that thing is getting closer. I can feel the control nexus," Rhea said, her voice strained, her bioluminescence flaring with an almost painful intensity as Cathar battled the chaotic energies. "It's deep within the primary array. We have to get closer." Dexter pushed the drifter to its limits, dodging automated defense platforms and collective fighters that swarmed like angry insects. Explosions rocked their small ship. "Shields at 20%? Dexter yelled over the din. "Rhea, if you're going to do something, now's the time." "Almost there," she gritted out, her hands outstretched, her entire body now a conduit for Cathar's power. Intricate patterns of pure, white energy, shot through with veins of gold and sapphire, blazed across her skin. Cathar is interfacing, fighting their control signals. Suddenly, a powerful beam of energy lanced out from the star lifter, not at them, but towards the approaching World Eater. It was a targeting beam, raw, concentrated power. The Collective wasn't just luring it, they were trying to direct it. "They're trying to weaponize the Devourer," Rhea cried, her eyes snapping open, blazing with Cathar's fury. "We can't let them." With a primal scream that was both hers and Cathar's, she unleashed the full force of their combined energy. It wasn't a destructive blast, but a wave of pure, resonant harmonic energy, tuned to the specific frequency Kalen had described, the frequency that could counter the Void blight. But also, they now hoped, disrupt precursor control systems. It surged from her, a beautiful, terrible wave of light and power, striking the star lifter's control nexus. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the megastructure shuddered violently. The siphoning tendrils retracted erratically. Warning sirens blared across collective channels, audible even on the drifter's damaged comms. The targeting beam flickered and died. "It's working!" Dexter shouted, elation mixing with terror as the star itself began to pulse even more violently. "But the star is going supernova. We have to get out of here." Rhea collapsed back into her seat, her light dimming dangerously, Cathar utterly spent. "Not yet. The Devourer, it's still coming. The star lifter is out of their control, but it's still a beacon." Dexter looked at the readouts. The World Eater was indeed still advancing, drawn by the dying star's uncontrolled energy surge. But something was different. Its advance seemed less focused, more confused, as if the Collective's guiding hand had been violently slapped away. "We need to give it something else to focus on," Rhea whispered, her voice faint. A different resonance. Suddenly, an idea sparked in Dexter's mind, born of desperation and engineering insight. The star lifter, it was designed to draw energy from the star. What if we reverse the polarity? Briefly, feed a massive, chaotic energy pulse back into it, away from the star. It might create a counter-resonance, a shockwave that could push the Devourer back, or at least confuse its senses long enough for us to escape the supernova. It was an insane gamble, overloading a system already on the brink of catastrophic failure. But it was their only chance. "Can Cathar guide me?" Dexter asked, his hands already flying over the drifter's controls, rerouting power, preparing to link their ship's systems with the star lifter's damaged nexus through the energy wave Rhea had created. Rhea nodded weakly, her hand finding his. "Thar will show you the pathways, the frequencies." Together, they worked, a silent, desperate ballad of human ingenuity and Lyran intuition. He pushed the drifter's engines to overload, channeling their entire output, while Rhea, drawing on the last vestiges of Cathar's strength, focused that raw power, shaping it into a coherent, targeted surge, aimed directly at the star lifter's core. The Stardust drifter screamed in protest, the lights died, the ship bucked like a wild animal. Then, with a final, bone-jarring lurch, the energy pulse hit the star lifter. The effect was instantaneous and spectacular. A wave of pure, chaotic energy erupted from the megastructure, not inwards towards the star, but outwards into the void, directly into the path of the advancing World Eater. The Devourer, A creature of immense but perhaps not sophisticated senses, recoiled as if struck, its shadowy tendrils flailing. It paused, disoriented by the sudden, violent energy backlash. At the same moment, Helios Prime finally died. It erupted in a breathtaking, terrifying wave of expanding plasma and radiation, a supernova. Now, Dexter yelled, wrenching the drifter away, its engines sputtering back to life on emergency reserves. Just as the shockwave hit them, they were tossed, battered, thrown clear of the exploding star, riding the very edge of destruction. When Dexter finally regained control, the view screen showed the remnants of Helios Prime, a rapidly expanding nebula. The star lifter was gone, vaporized. And the World Eater, it was retreating, fading back into the deep void. Its hunt disrupted, its prey vanished in fire. They had survived. They had stopped the Silas Collective's immediate plan. The journey back to Sanctuary was slow, the Stardust drifter heavily damaged. Rhea was unconscious for most of it, Cathar in a deep healing stasis. Dexter, exhausted but alive, tended to her, his heart aching with a mixture of fear and profound love. When she finally awoke days later, as they limped into Sanctuary's hidden docking bay, her first word was his name. Dexter. He was there, holding her hand. "I'm here, Rhea. We made it." The immediate aftermath was a blur of relief, medical attention, and debriefings. Kaelin confirmed that Rhea's harmonic pulse had not only disrupted the star lifter, but had also sent a feedback surge through the Collective's network, crippling many of their core operations. They were scattered, weakened, their leadership in disarray. The threat for now had been neutralized. More astonishingly, samples taken from Rhea and Cathar after the star lifter event showed that the intense energy surge, the unique harmonic resonance they had generated, had somehow catalyzed something within Cathar. The potential to counter the void blight was now not just a theory, but a tangible reality. It wasn't a simple cure-all, but a complex bioenergetic therapy that Cathar, with Lyran healers, could now begin to develop and replicate. The key they held was now a tangible hope for the galaxy. Their personal choice to confront the star lifter, to risk everything, had ripple effects, but the most unexpected consequence came from the data logs Dexter had managed to salvage from the Stardust drifter's damaged sensors, combined with Cathar's residual impressions of the star lifter's deep systems. "There's something else," Dexter said, days later, as he and Rhea, their children playing nearby in Sanctuary's tranquil gardens, reviewed the fragmented data. The star lifter, it wasn't just a weapon or an energy siphon. It was built on top of something much older, a network. Rhea, her bio-luminescence now a steady, vibrant sapphire interwoven with threads of warm gold, leaned closer. Cathar resonated with understanding, precursor technology, deeper than even the Collective knew. The data pointed to a series of dormant, incredibly ancient structures scattered across the galaxy jump gates. Not the relatively limited hyperlanes currently in use, but true instantaneous transit points capable of crossing vast interstellar distances in the blink of an eye. The star lifter had been unintentionally activating, or perhaps destabilizing, a nexus point in this forgotten network. If we can understand this, Dexter breathed, excitement lighting his face. If we can reactivate these gates safely, it would change everything. Faster travel, new worlds for exploration, true interstellar community, peacefully. This was their resolution. The fight against the Silas Collective had inadvertently led them to a discovery that could unite the galaxy in a way diplomacy never could. Months later, the first of the ancient precursor jump gates was tentatively reactivated, a joint effort of human engineers, Lyran scientists guided by Cathar's unique senses, and other allied species. Dexter Bolt, no longer a cynical diplomat, but a celebrated explorer and engineer, stood on the bridge of a new exploration vessel, the Cathar's Light. Beside him, Rhea Void, her official title now Galactic Emissary for Precursor Studies and Interspecies Harmony, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Their children, Leo and Elara, now inseparable friends, watched from a nearby console, their faces alight with wonder as the ancient gate shimmered to life before them, a swirling vortex of impossible colors leading to unknown stars. Rhea's bio-luminescence was a breathtaking tapestry of joy, love, and hope, her light intertwining with the glow of the gate. She leaned her head on Dexter's shoulder. "Unexpected union?" she murmured, quoting an old Lyran proverb Cathar had shared. "Often forges the strongest stars." Dexter smiled, his arm around her. "Across the stars," he agreed, his gaze on the shimmering portal. "Fighting for love, and finding new life, in more ways than one." Their journey had been one of terror and discovery, of loss and improbable connection. They had faced down cosmic horrors and shadowy cabals, their love forged in fire, their strengths amplified by their bond. Now, as they prepared to step into a new frontier, they carried not just the hope for a cure to a galactic plague, but the key to a brighter, more interconnected future for all. The path ahead was unknown, but they would face it together, their unexpected union a beacon for a galaxy ready for a new dawn. The Kethar's light surged forward, entering the ancient gateway, bound for a future they had fought for, and won together. Their love story, once a whisper in the chaos, now echoed across the newly opened starways, a testament to courage, adaptability, and the enduring power of connection, even in the deepest, darkest voids of space.